Now that we've defined our site, we can go ahead and start creating the site in terms of implementing web pages. However, I do want to point something out in that I want to do something called managing our site. And this is going to allow me to set up the credentials, the password credentials that get supplied to me by a hosting company. Now, as I say though, you don't have to do this step just at the moment. You can leave this step until you've finished your site and you are ready at that point to upload the whole site to your hosting server. However, for a sense of completeness within this section, I'll walk you through it now, and of course you can always refer back to this tutorial once you finish your site. Therefore, this is the process. Come up to Site on your menu and then roll down to your third option, Manage Sites. You'll then see this Manage Sites dialog open up, and you can see all the sites that I've got at the moment, either in development or just finished. In your case, your list of sites here will probably only be the one site, the one that we've just set up. Anyway, whatever does apply to you, find the site name that you are working on, and there it is in our case, TT Stockton Heath, and then just underneath you're going to see these 4 buttons. Well, with my site selected, I want to use this second button. This button is going to allow me to edit the currently selected site. Therefore, once I click on it, I now see this site setup dialog that we saw in the previous tutorial. Okay, now we need to come over to the left-hand column, and rather than being on the Site button at the top, click on the one below, Servers, because that's what we're going to do. We're going to set up our server information. Or rather, we're going to enter the details provided to us by our hosting company, enter those details, and then Dreamweaver from that point will be able to connect to the hosting server and then upload all the files of our site. Now just over here on the right hand side in italics, then you'll see the information that I alluded to a few moments ago. In that we don't need to go through this step at the moment whilst we are creating our site. However, I do like to do this right at the beginning so that I can test my site as I go along, just to see what it looks like in the real world on various different browsers. Anyway, this is the process. Come down to this plus button down here. You'll see the pop-up telling us that this is now going to add a new server. Once you select it, then you'll see this dialog, and there are 2 tabs, Basic and Advanced. We're going to work through the Basic tab. At the top in the server name field, we want to get rid of that placeholder text, unnamed server, and then type in the word remote, because this will indicate to us that the information we are about to add in here allows us to access the remote server that we are going to place all the files of our website on. Now, I can't tell you what to set for the second field, connect using. I tend to connect to the server via something called FTP, File Transfer Protocol. You might be connecting to your server via a different method. You'll need that information from the hosting company. Okay, so I'm going to leave it on FTP. That's how I connect. And then the following 3 fields, well, these get filled in with information that is provided to you by the hosting company. I have to fill in what are effectively 3 passwords here. These are known as my FTP credentials. So I'm going to fill these in. As I say, you'll need to get all this information from the hosting company that you are dealing with. And once I've filled these in, the FTP address, the username and the password, well, then I'm good to go really. You can see in this checkbox here that it is checked, save, i.e. I won't need to enter this information anymore. I will only need to enter it this once. And providing you are connected to the internet at the moment, if you click on the button here to test, then this will do exactly that. Dreamweaver will attempt to connect to your hosting server just to make sure that all your information that you've just added in here, these 3 passwords, well, Dreamweaver will check just to make sure that they are correct. So I'll click on test now. Okay, good stuff. Dreamweaver very quickly determines that that is the correct information. As we can see, Dreamweaver connected to my web server successfully. So I'll just click on OK there, and then I'll run down here and hit save. And now you'll see your server information here. There it is, informing us that this will connect to our remote server and the other relevant information too. By the way, if you want to test your site locally, as it's known, on your own PC, then you would need to check in the testing checkbox there. The details that you've just filled in will be different. Anyway, this is for my remote server, so I'll leave it as it is. Now let me just work my way down to these other 2 categories. This third option, version control, Well, in this total training course, we're not too concerned, really, with version control. In that, version control, well, it's an Adobe function built into Dreamweaver that relates to web designers who are working in a team environment. I.e., if you are working within a team building a site, then version control allows you to keep track on what all those individual team members are up to at one particular point. It simply means, I suppose, in essence, that if you've got one person working on a certain page, well, you don't really want another person working on exactly the same page, doing a slightly different job, because those two team members will be overwriting the work each other is doing. What I'm more concerned with is this last option, Advanced Settings. Once you twirl this category open, you can see all these subcategories. Now, I'm not going to go through them all. They're not all relevant to what I'm doing, but let me go through a few with you. Selecting local info throws open these options. And you can see at the top, we have a default images folder field. You don't need to set this if you don't want to. It just means that all your images, when you bring them in, will be saved into a particular folder. At the present time, I've not got an images folder set up. Yes, I've got a photographs folder set up, but of course that only contains photographs. I could also set up an images folder for illustrations or things like that. Or, within a program such as Photoshop, you were creating small graphics. Anyway, let's move down to this category, cloaking. Now, what cloaking allows you to do is stipulate certain folders, or even individual files, so that they don't get sent to the hosting server. So, for example, if you've got some Photoshop documents, rather than resulting JPEG or PNG files, well, you probably don't really want to send those Photoshop documents to the server. Well, by having this checkbox checked, Enable Cloaking, this means that you can manually cloak certain types of file. And just underneath, if you check in that checkbox, cloak files ending with, then by default, you won't need to manually exclude Flash files or Photoshop document files. Anyway, I'm going to uncheck that. I'd rather do it all manually. And then working our way down to Design Notes. Well, as you can see by the text at the top there, Design Notes let us add or edit and share extra information with a file, such as comments on its status or the name of the original source file. Now, you might not think you want this checkbox checked, Maintain Design Notes, but just in case you are building a site for a client and they don't have a copy of Dreamweaver, however they do have a copy of Adobe's Contribute, then you will need this Maintain Design Notes checkbox checked. And in fact, if I come down to the Contribute category, well, within here, you can see this checkbox, Enable Contribute Compatibility. Well, you would check in there. To be honest, I think Contribute is falling a little out of favour these days. I don't see many people using it. However, just in case your clients do use it, well, do make sure that that checkbox is checked. Right, let's work our way down to the penultimate option, Web Fonts. Remember how I had that folder set up in the previous tutorial and then I deleted it? Well, I did that only because I wanted to go through the working method with you here on how we can easily create a new folder. So should we be using something like Adobe's Typekit to allow us to draw in, shall we say, lots and lots of extra types of font? Well, it would be good if we'd got a distinct folder within our site where we can keep all that information and relevant files. So let's go ahead and create one now. I'll click on this button to navigate to the relevant master folder on my hard drive. And here it is. And you can see at the moment, we've only got these three folders now, Movies, Photographs, and Text. All I need to do to create a new folder, of course, is to click on here, New Folder. And then I'll name it Web Fonts. And by having it selected, I can come down here and click on Select Folder. Okay, so that path is now set up, ready to accept all the web font information. And the very last option, well, this works in exactly the same way. If you also use Adobe's Edge Animate and you want to centrally locate all those particular files in one folder within your site folder, well, you would go through the same process. Now I'm good to go here, so I'll run down and click on Save. Now you might or you might not see this message. Because I've slightly changed the structure within my site, then Dreamweaver will once more have to go through the process of recreating the structure. So I'll click on OK. And that's it, we're all done. So I'll come down here to the bottom right and click on Done. Therefore now in my Files panel, you can see that I've now added in this extra folder for my web fonts. And that's it, we're all set up. That's what we need to do when we want to manage our site in terms of entering all the information that is relevant so that we can connect to our hosting server.